Welcome to the show. You can probably hear today that I'm a little bit under the weather, but I'm trying to still bring you the episodes a bit later than usual because of, unfortunately, because of illness and slows down my ability to produce the episodes. But I hope you'll bear with me. I have a question for you. Do you have a demo reel as a speaker? And do you even really need one? If you'd like to be on the path to making $10,000, euros, pounds, whatever currency you're working in, or more in your professional speaking work, can a good demo reel help? My guest today is Cam Beaudoin, professional speaker and demo reel specialist. Cam helps his clients increase their perceived value by making sure that their demo reels stand out and look great. Getting started as a speaker, or really progressing, you want to give yourself every advantage possible. In this episode, we'll be answering questions like, is it better to have a poor quality demo or no demo at all? If you don't know what a demo reel is, you'll definitely want to stay tuned. Welcome to Present Influence, the show that helps coaches, speakers, and communication professionals develop the skills to impact, influence, and inspire. My name's John Ball, keynote coach, professional speaker, and your guide on the journey to mastery level presentation skills. My mission is to provide professional communicators like you with everything you need to maximize your impact and present with influence. Follow the show on your favorite podcast app for weekly episodes and interviews with influence experts, and join me on LinkedIn for the Present Influence weekly newsletter. And if you've enjoyed the show before, or if you enjoyed today's episode, please do go and leave a 5-star review on whichever podcast app you are listening on to help let other people know that this is a high value show. Cam, welcome to the show. I've been looking forward to speaking to you for quite a while now because you talk about something that really any good speaker, professional speaker really needs to know, or anyone who wants to be needs to know about, which is demo videos. And so tell us, for speakers who may be not familiar with that, what a demo video is and why it's important.
Sure. John, first off, I'm so happy to be here as well. What is a demo reel? So first off, demo reel, highlights reel, speaker reel, promo reel, like it's a whole mixed bag on what people actually call this thing. But really, you got to think of it. It is the first impression that you are making on many event planners, event organizers, conference leads, things like that. When you're going to an event and you need to demonstrate what your skill is and what you're going to present on stage, this video is it. So gone are the days where an event organizer will watch a 12-minute TED Talk. They just won't do it. So really, you're putting your best foot forward by showing off who you are on stage, who you are in podcasts, what you speak on, the problems that you solve while on stage, the transformation that you bring audiences through. And that's what a demo reel does. It is a very tight 2 to 3 minute video that like encompasses your entire speaking business in whatever that is, 120 seconds, something like that.
Wow. It sounds like a short thing to do a lot of work in a very small, confined space. What was your first experience with this? Like, where did you first recognize that this was something you needed to have?
I was actually going through a speaker program myself. So I'm a speaker on disability inclusion and accessibility. And while I was going through this program, we get to this part where the coaches, the organizers say, okay, now it's time to go do your demo reel. Okay. And so looking for advice and some coaching help, they said, okay, what you have to do is you have to go and watch all of your content, go and watch all that stuff. And I'm like sitting here with 40 keynotes under my belt. And I'm like, are you serious? You're telling me I have to go and spend 40 hours watching this content? And, I did. And this is before a lot of the AI tools came out to speed that along or cut up stuff for us. And like, I had all these clips where I thought was pretty good. And I put it together in a composition. I thought this kind of made sense the way it was. And I did a mini interview. I recorded myself and I had plants all in the background because we're big plants people here, me and my wife. So we have a whole plants wall. So that'd be cool to put there. Wasn't look like it was in my home. And that was my first demo reel. I did what I had and I just found it again last week or a couple of weeks ago. And I watched and I'm cringing inside because now that I actually craft demo reels and I'm thinking, wow, no wonder I didn't get really booked from this. But it did its job. When people were asking for something that would demonstrate my abilities, it demonstrated what skills I had at the time. I didn't have many stage performances because it was during the middle of COVID. And it really showed off, the webinars that I did, the panels that I was on, the podcast that I was featured in, and I was able to demonstrate what skills I had. And it really represented who I was as a speaker at that time.
That's great. What kind of difference did it make to you as a speaker?
It made it easy. When you think of that whole term, you got to show people, not just tell people, right? It's one thing if you book a call. So I think one thing I talk about a lot these days is the whole outreach process and your marketing strategy and things like that for speakers. I think now that as I'm doing more services towards speakers, me being a speaker, and I was a full-time speaker for some time, I was a speaker for 7 years, and now I've transitioned into this speaker support kind of role, and that's what my business does. What I've learned is that what it can do is that the very first thing that you should be showing people is, here's who I am on stage. Because data now shows that what event organizers are looking for is a speaker who is able to interact with the audience, give value to their audience too. And if you can start to demonstrate that in the very first interaction that you have, you're not just talking about it, right? It's not just a speaker abstract that you give to an event organizer. It's not just a website or, like I said, a TED talk. Like, that doesn't really show who you are on stage. And if we know that event planners want to see audience interaction, then you got to put that into a demo. That already enhances your perceived value. Like, it brings you up a notch. And that means you can start asking for more money, right? You're no longer considered for a breakout room. Now you could be considered for a keynote role, like a keynote slot. And that really facilitates the conversation, saying, okay, we're not like, I'm not coming in for a freebie gig. I'm coming in for a paid speaker. And it puts you already in that position to be able to negotiate the correct fees that you want, or the correct like slot, the correct day, like things like that, puts you in a better negotiating position.
So anyone who is wanting to get paid as a speaker should have this. Are they going to have challenges if they don't, basically?
Yeah. So I think it's all about your brand. And the more competition that enters the marketplace, you and I both know, right? Like, that speaking is one of the lowest barrier to entry side gigs that you can do, right? Everyone could be a speaker. No, not everyone could be a speaker. Everyone thinks they could be a speaker. And this is the process that we have to go through. But as more people enter the marketplace, like, how do we all stand out? As you and I both know, like, you could probably list out some of these too. You got to pick a niche. You got to think of a problem that you need to go and solve. You got to pick a lane. You got to pick an industry that you want to serve. And these are all really important things. And the more focused you get at that, then the better that does for you, the better that represents your brand. If you're known as, like John, for you, if you're known as the X guy or the X girl, like if you're known as that person, that is a really strong negotiating and bargaining point. Like, that's something that is hard to say, oh, I don't want you. You're the AI expert in the, I don't know, farming industry. Like, you are the guy who talks about AI and farming. It's really hard to negotiate against that, right? Because people want you for that reason. So if you have a brand that represents that as well, then you just reinforce that again and again in people's minds. And so that's what branding is. And this fits into that branding altogether.
We'll definitely talk about some of the elements a bit more of this, but let's just start off with some sort of bigger picture things. Like, let's say you've got your speaker reel, good or bad, you've got your speaker reel.
Yeah.
What do you do with it?
Oh, I love that question. I get asked this all the time. Once we complete a demo reel, then people are saying, now what? So they're very basic. Okay. So number one, it should go on your website front and center, because again, what do people see? They want to see you in action. So I recommend people put it above the fold, in, sometimes even autoplay, right? As soon as people load, like autoplay with mute, don't flood people's ears. But, as soon as people go to your website, they can see you in action. If you don't want to do that, because some people like a big headline there, put it right underneath the headline, say, watch my demo reel. Like, it should be, we should move past the idea of tell me what you can do to show me what you can do. So that's number one. Number two, it should go into your email signature. So upload to YouTube, put in your email signature. And the good thing about that is that you can start collecting data from that as well. So from your email signature, how many people are actually watching your reel? Are people actually clicking on that link? You can just go into YouTube and check out the analytics. And at the bottom, there's actual data that shows you where the source is from. So go and get that data and go and understand, okay, now I can start to reflect on, is this positioned here? Are most views coming from my website, or things like that? So those, by and large, are the two top places it should go. And then now when you're starting to apply for gigs, this should be in your speaker package, right? I think you and I both know. Help me list some of these out here, like your speaker demo reel, your abstract, website link. You don't want to overload. I'm not sure if you have anything else that you would send out for an application. What am I missing there?
Probably not much more initially.
Right,
There are
right.
things that come in further down the line. Yeah.
Don't add your price sheet. That's one thing that a lot of people do. You got to keep that.
Yeah.
The whole goal of your speaker package and the demo reel is to get you on the call with the organizer. And it's at that point that you start the sales process, really. So this is really part of that warm-up sequence, getting people intrigued in who you are as a speaker and really elevating your level of value and expertise. So that's like how the deployment process works.
That's great. Yeah, the bit you said about putting the speaker reel, your demo reel into your email signature, hadn't actually heard of that before, and I really like that. I think that's a great tip for anybody to do. So for anyone who hasn't done this before, how do you start? Let's say you're doing this by yourself. What do you need to do first of all? Maybe you haven't got a lot of speaking or maybe you haven't got much recorded material of you speaking. How do you even begin then with a demo reel?
So you kind of nailed it right there. You need to go and hire a videographer to record you speaking. Okay, so let's even back up a few more steps. Maybe you're still looking for speaking engagements. This is where your free gigs really start to pull their weight. So when I know negotiate a free gig, because sometimes we just want the exposure, right? We don't get paid an exposure buck, but sometimes we see value and benefits in going giving free gigs. I think a lot of people knock free gigs. I don't. I think that there's still value in there as long as I can do something like collect email addresses or bring in a videographer or add the logo to my list or pitch people. I know not a lot of speakers these days are like, they don't like that whole idea of pitching, but I think that the more comfortable we can get from selling from stage, even if it's just buy my book or go get on my email list or join my community, there's other things that we can do that's not a $20,000 program. Anyway, let me move away from that.
Yeah.
I think
No,
that,
I just did an
yeah,
episode on that with a guy called Mitch Cameron, and it was an awesome episode about pitching from the stage and selling. So, if that's something you're looking to do, go and check that out. But yeah.
yeah, and it's so undervalued. It's such a lost art. I was just listening to a podcast from Russell Brunson, of all people, legendary marketer. I'm sure maybe you're familiar with him. Maybe the audience is as well. And he was saying that as well. In the 90s and 2000s, everyone was pitching from stage. Like, it was a very common thing. You go to pitch fests, and I don't remember ever hearing of pitch fest too much anymore. That has since gone away. There's a negative connotation to, I'm just going to go to an event and everyone's going to try and pitch me. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't learn how to sell from stage as well. Anyway, that's a whole other topic of conversation.
Great, another point.
So your free events, what you need to do is you need to ask the event organizer, hey, in exchange for doing this free event, I would love to bring in my own videographer so they can record me speak. Now, I have a theory. If you don't want to be recorded, okay, if you're not confident enough to spend the $500 to $800 to bring a videographer in to come and record you speak, they're going to mic you up. You're going to get high quality audio, high quality video footage. If you're not like confident in doing that, then maybe there's something like the rehearsal. Maybe you're not quite confident enough in your speech yet, but you need video of you in front of an audience. And yes, you have to pay for it yourself. Don't just get someone from the back of the room, hand your camera to your friend. And I used to recommend this. And so if you listen to my stuff a year and a half, 2 years ago, I'd say, go just record something from the back of the room with this. It doesn't do it anymore because event planners want to see you, like I said, interact with the audience. How do you handle the crowd? How do you move people through? Are you somebody who waffles around like me? Or are you a storyteller? Do you get to the point? What kind of speaker are you? So event planners want to see that. And by the way, it looks really good on social media as well, which I know that we're all trying to improve. Like, everyone out there knows they need to do social media. So you're going to get some high quality video, some high quality audio, and then we compile that together. So I now have a minimum standard of you need at least 2 on-stage performances. And if you don't have enough after that, then we would maybe book an interview. We'd maybe book a podcast or something like that so that we can record some extra content just for audio. But really, that's the minimum now. So 2 live stage performances. Because it doesn't have to be like a 30,000 person performance either. It could just be a
Right.
local chamber of commerce. And that's the minimum amount of content you add into there. So that's the starting point. Get some stuff recorded like with good quality. I'll tell you why, actually. Because people assume that if you're not willing to spend enough money to get high quality audio footage, then what does that say about your talk? Are you really investing in yourself too? So I think there's an undercurrent there that I'm currently exploring and asking more event planners about.
Mm.
So you got all that done. Okay, that's all done. So next thing you want to do is you want to cut it all up. So whether that's you manually going in and writing down timestamps, like I had to do back then, you go and do that. You look for things that are good hooks, really engaging moments in your talk. Get a friend to help you out if you can. You want to grab things that are data points. Those are always very powerful as well. You want to grab things that are like transformations, exploring your signature method or blueprint or something like that. You want to grab those pieces as well. And the big one that people miss is, if there's one thing you need to remember, it's explaining the problem that the audience has. So going back to the whole thing about your niche, if you are really focused in and dialed in on that niche, that one industry, you're going to be able to explain the problems that they have better than they are, right? Because that's the whole goal of this. You explain that in the demo reel is going to make event planners say, that's our person. That's our guy. That's the person we want on stage, because they're able to define and speak to the problem that my audience has better than they can, better than I can. And that's what event planners want to see. So you got all that kind of laid out, and you always want to organize it like the hero's journey. So you do a hook, you explain the problem, create some intrigue in there. And by the way, you haven't talked about yourself yet, right? Then only after you've done about a minute and a half of building the problem, building the intrigue, then you explain who you are. You talk about your credentials and things like that. You end with the transformation, your built-in process, things like that. And then you close off with just a nice end card. That's how we always structure at the beginning our demo reels. And of course, there's little things we got to tweak. Maybe don't follow that process 100% every time, but that is the general framework to how that's done. So
Yeah.
think hero's journey. That's it.
It sounds a lot to fit into a couple of minutes. It really
Right? Doesn't
does.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do love what you said about making sure that you actually include in there the problem that you're solving for people. And certainly I've coached people on this stuff for a long time as well, not as specifically as you do, but as part of the program that you went through yourself. But that's not something that necessarily has been pushed forward as something that people should make sure that they do. It's been much more of a focus on just let them see you on stage and let them see you in a variety of different situations on stage, audience interaction often being a good one. A few follow-up questions before we move on a bit further deeper into this. What kind of investment should people be thinking to make in a videographer that would be reasonable at this stage?
Yeah. I just want to go back and talk about one thing. So what you just mentioned, there was a highlights reel. And
Mm.
what I've heard is a lot of videographers, when you hire them for a talk, they will offer, hey, we'll make a demo reel for you from one talk. And that ends up being just a highlights reel.
Yeah.
And like, that's not usually sufficient. What, experts in demo reel, like what we bring is something like, sales and marketing is my thing. Like really, that's what this all comes down to. And yes, there's a lot of creativity and design work involved, stuff like that. But really, it's the sales and marketing background from running a business and running a successful speaking business. Like the industry can be fickle sometimes. And so knowing what an event planner wants to see is very important.
Cool.
Investments should usually be about one speaking gig's worth with a minimum of $1,000. That's it. So if you're making $1,000 yet, think you got to spend $1,000 to hire a videographer. And I just go at the beginning, you go to Upwork, you search up top videographers in city. That's it. You just go there like that. Just so I found some great videographers for $200. They come in, they record, they go. No edits, nothing like that, because you just want the raw, unedited file. That's easy money for them. They spend a half day, they come in to make $200 and leave. You're giving a 45-minute talk. You get some B-roll in there. You want to ask them for that extra kind of content. You walking up on stage, you talking, interact with the audience, shaking hands afterwards. Easy peasy. It's like a couple $100. Now, yeah, in some cities it can go up. I know in LA it's quite expensive. You know what? If you're in Washington, for some reason, videographers in Washington cost a lot of money. I don't know why, but it seems to be the city. Like I cannot find a videographer there for under about $800.
Right.
Because you got to spend it, right? This is your brand, and you're going to use this content over and over and over again as you keep refining your brand over again. You're like, even if you change your talk, just the content itself, if you moving around the audience, like you're still going to use that footage no matter what. So that's a typical investment just for the videographer piece.
Yeah. I've often said that anything you put out as content online, anything like whether you're on podcasts or videos, YouTube, live, whatever, is your branding. It's your image. So you have to curate that. You have to be careful about what you're putting up. And that does bring me to my next question. Is it better to have a bad demo reel than no demo reel?
It's not worth it. Spend the extra money. Like even if you have to spend a little bit longer doing it, a good demo reel represents you in the marketplace, really. And so again, and this kind of is the same thing as like a good website, right? If your website looks like it was built in 1995, then that's what people are going to assume your talks. They haven't been upgraded in a long time. It is really the reflection of you out there. In fact, I've heard of some speakers these days saying we're not even going to build a website. We're just going to do things off social media, a speaker abstract, and a demo reel now. Do I recommend that? Not really, but I've seen many successful speakers do that. If you go to the NSA website and look through their speakers, you'll find lots of speakers with no website, lots of speakers with no demo reel. But if you start to move off things like the speaker bureaus and things, then you start to see people at a certain level of game, right? Speaker bureaus generally don't have any speakers under $5,000. And that's when you start seeing people really start to take their craft seriously. Are you in this as a hobbyist, or are you in this as a pro speaker? And that's really where I start to see the division. That's how I coach my clients too. I've turned away clients who are not quite ready for me yet, or who are not in the game, right? They think this is just, and to them, I just say, you don't need a demo reel. Like You're just going to, if you just want to get free gigs, if you just want to go out there and let yourself know, then just go get a highlights reel, just get something of you speaking, and that's cool. But if you're ready to treat this like a business, then you're investing in your business, and this is part of it.
So one of the things that has come up for me in conversations with bookers, and I know some people who have speaker agencies as well, that they often are looking for more than a demo reel. Like they'll often say they also want to see 10 to 15 minutes of live continuous footage from one of your speaking events as well. Is that something you've come across? And is that something you'd say was important to add in to your demo?
So again, what a great reason to go and hire a videographer with good quality stuff, right? Again, you don't want the back of the room iPhone because the audio quality is going to suck and it's just going to make you look like no, it just brings a level of an amateur level to your speak, which, and you may be the best speaker out there, but if people's first perception of you is, man, I can barely hear the speaker because it was just recorded from the back of in an auditorium from the back of the room, then again, the investment should be secondary to what you're going to get out of it. So yeah, I've heard that as well. Many organizers are looking for that, especially like a clip of your talk. What better way of doing it than you've got this demo reel, which is highly edited, highly produced. Plus, you've hired a videographer to go and record your entire talk. You've now got that signature talk as part of your video bank. You put it on YouTube and it's ready to go. Like it's ready to go. You can just share it with people. And I want to take a quick pause and I just want to say something. A lot of people are so afraid of sharing their full talks on YouTube because they think someone's going to steal it. Why would somebody pay for me if I've got my talk on YouTube? Like if that's the if that's the mindset that you have, then I don't think you've quite cracked the idea of speaking and the benefits of having somebody live presenting. Like there's no big organizations who's going to be like, we saved a bunch of money by hiring a speaker. We're just going to put their YouTube video up on the big screen today, everyone.
Right.
15,000 people join. Like no one's doing that. Like if they want a speaker, they're going to hire a speaker. So don't be afraid of sharing your knowledge. Don't be afraid of sharing your talks. You got to get that out there. And you'll probably get some feedback on, is your talk really as good as you think it is yourself?
Which is very important to get as well on the journey. Before recording, you were kind enough to share an insight that you've had this week about practice. How practiced do you feel someone should be before recording their talk for their demo?
Oh, this is great. So let me just tell that quick story. So I've been speaking for a long time, but I've now that I'm talking more about demo reels and more like the business aspect of speaking, a lot about sales and marketing, like I mentioned before. I realized that, I'd never actually given a full webinar on business and sales and marketing for speakers. And yesterday I gave my first one, a self-hosted webinar talking about all this kind of stuff. And even though I'm no longer a newbie speaker, I know that you don't start with PowerPoint slides, right? So anyone listening, if you're starting with PowerPoint slides, it's the wrong direction you want to go. You want to start with your outline first. Okay. Then your speaker abstract. Then you want to go in your script. You write out your whole script and then you build your slides off that. And then you go back and you rehearse it. That becomes the loop that you follow. Never start with your slides. But I made the mistake of only rehearsing a few times. And I had a bunch of extra notes on my outline thinking, that'll be okay. Like I know this topic. I talk about it every day. I'm in, like, this is what I do. I do demo reels and it didn't bomb. But man, I felt like I waffled around a whole bunch and I retold the same story twice, which was a really big mistake. I wrote a note in there, so like, tell this story again. And so by the time I got to that point, I was like, I realized that I'd forgotten that, oh no, I haven't practiced that story well enough. And so I told it, and it went on for a couple of minutes and I could see people deviating and picking up their phones and doing stuff. It's just a reminder that even though you know the topic again, and even though you live it every single day, sometimes unless you've really taken a step back and said, okay, I'm recording myself and I'm going to listen to myself a day later, it just reinforces that we all need to remember the basics of speaking. And so I know there's some speakers out there who never rehearse, right? I
Yeah.
was talking about Jordan Peterson, whether you like his policies or not. Hold up. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with those, but he never rehearses. But mind you, he was a teacher for a number of years.
I would also say he's not the clearest communicator all the time as
True.
well.
Yeah, you're very right. You're very true. But like we are entertainers. I think that's forgotten. I think that we are motivators but at its core, we're in the entertainment business. I know many
Right.
magician speakers. I know many comedy speakers. I know many motivational speakers. And yet we're there. We need to put on a performance, right?
I love
And
that you
a
said that. Yeah.
good performer rehearses and practices and gets better at that one craft, which is again why it's so important to have a signature talk, right? Like you don't want to be creating a new thing every single time. So anyway, lesson relearned again, a big re lesson for me to sit back and then rehearse that webinar again and again and again and again.
I love they got the entertainment side of this thing, because a lot of people do come to speaking from coaching, from teaching, from workshopping, where they are essentially the guide or the teacher, but not the entertainer.
Yeah.
And it's such a critical part of this that you have to turn up and it's okay, may not be there and natural, but you have to get some level of this. You don't have to become the next late night host or anything like that, but you do need to be more engaging with your audience. What would you say, maybe this is somewhat subjective, but what would you say is an appropriate amount of rehearsal for before giving a talk?
I've heard some crazy numbers like 1 hour per minute of your talk, which is a lot of rehearsal time.
That's a lot.
But I don't think it would be, I don't think that's time poorly spent if you were to spend that much time, right? Think of, okay, I love to put the parallel to a lot of what we're doing to comedians because it's just so easy to understand how the comedy industry works. Have you ever been to like a Monday night amateur night?
Open mic. Yeah, sure.
Right. Sometimes we see some people there who are like, yo, I've seen this guy on Just for Laughs, big comedy festival in Canada. I've seen this guy on Just for Laughs. What's he doing here? Until you realize that open mic is the time that comedians practice their new bits. Right? They've got the list, and people I've seen big speakers. Comedians. They come up and they've got their pad of yellow paper and they've got all these bits that they wanted and they just riff them all out to the crowd. And they go, okay, 1 out of 10. Okay, that was a 4 out of 10. I got this. And the next time they'll come back and they'll rehearse those because what are they doing? They're practicing their bits in front of a live audience that they can go and bring into their big world tours.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that parallel. I think about it all the time nowadays. Like that, those are the reps that you got to put in to do it. So yeah, if they go to comedian, that means they got to sit down and they got to write their jokes. Then they got to spend the time to go to open mic night on a regular basis to practice those jokes. Then they have to come back and they have to refine those jokes. Then they have to go back to open mic and say it again. That's the loop that you need to do. And I think that many speakers, we come into the world of speaking, like you said, as coaches, as trainers, as, I don't know, as the corporate person who just knows a lot about that topic. And then we forget that at one point we were given the authority, so we didn't have to do that. Today, you're going to listen to John, right? John's here and John's going to speak like that. That was me at IBM when speaking about disability inclusion. Here's Cam. He's going to tell you about accessibility. Listen to him, right? You're given that authority. But then when we're running this as a speaking business, sometimes that authority needs to be earned. And that is the professionalism that we need to bring into the industry. So
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, I do come across all the time. I come across people who say, oh, they can just get up on a stage and riff and just talk. And it's all great. It's a good thing to be able to do. But I don't think it's something that actually helps you be a good keynote speaker.
Yes.
Because they do require a level of polish. They do require structure and practice and having the framework there and the stories there, the examples. It all has to sequence and come together and culminate in your transformation and everything else. It's like that. If you can do that on the fly, I bow to you. So, yeah, that's amazing. But I don't think anyone really can successfully do that.
Yeah. I suspect it might be something like, you know how people say, oh, I'm fine on 4 hours of sleep. You know, you mean, oh, I'm fine with that. And then research comes out again and again that the people who can live off less sleep is something like 4% of the world. You know, there's some statistic out there that says, yeah, technically, you know, you're fine with it. But the rest of us are just lying to ourselves that we're in a constant state of exhaustion. So you're in a constant state of my talk is good enough. And then you wonder why you're not making it to that 5-figure or 5-figure level. Like, I want to go and make $15,000 per keynote. The level of expertise, of quality, of rehearsal, it's got to go up, right? No, it's not saying like multi packages or that kind of stuff. But if you want to be paid upfront, here's $15,000. Like, I've met and spoken to speakers who do that, and they've got one talk that they've rehearsed 1,000 times. And you know, you cannot negotiate with them on, I want to tweak this, I want to change it. They're like, no, I have one slide in there where I'm going to talk about your company, and that's it, because that's where the maximum amount of customization I want to do to my talk. And I compare that to, you know, if are you going to call up an energy drink company and say, hey, can we just tweak this a little bit for Mike? They're like, no, we'll put a sticker on the label and that says your company, and that's it. That's all we're going to do. So I love talking about this, the business of speaking.
Yeah. And that brings up a good point as well. Like, some people will just customize their talk every single time that they speak, or create new talks pretty much every time that they speak. that's a heck of a lot of work for you if you want to
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
if you want to
yeah,
have a
yeah.
speaking business. Like all that time you're spending creating, you're not getting paid. So
Right. I think it
yeah,
comes down to fear, right? I think it comes down to
yeah,
the fear that if I only have one talk, then what if people don't want it? And I think that's, again, going back to the analysis of the talk, like you have to be humble enough to look at your talk objectively and say, wow, at this one part, even though I'm telling my story, I may be saying it in 90 words. I need to learn how to say that in 45 words. I need to learn to cut it down in half to keep the pace of my talk going because I lose myself at that point in my talk. And if I'm if you're watching your own talk and you want to reach for your phone, what do you think that people who've never heard you before are going to say? Just because you've got a great story about, your life growing up, like maybe it just is, maybe you haven't rehearsed that part enough. So maybe that's what you need to focus on, refining what you've got right now instead of creating new. Like it's exhausting. It's exhausting.
yeah. I love what there's a guy called Matthew Dix. I don't know if you heard of him, but he has a great book called Storyworthy, and he's won
Mm,
the Moth Championship a bunch of times and stuff like that. And this is one of the things he talks about. He says he works on the assumption that whenever he goes up to speak, that no one actually cares about anything he has to say. So it's his job as a speaker to make them care. And then you have to be practiced. You have to show up and be able to know that what you're going to deliver is going to deliver.
right.
So I particularly love that.
And John, I think we could even talk about this in podcasting too, right? The very first time I was on a podcast about speaker demo reels, I didn't have my data. I didn't have my facts and stats in front of me. And I think even that was a bit of rehearsal because the next time I spoke, I'm like, I'm never going to embarrass myself like that again. And okay, it was okay, right? People asked me questions about it, but I didn't have any dates and figures and data to back anything up. But, now I've got a list of that, right? I did the research. I spent the time. I researched it. And prepping yourself a little bit more before a podcast is never a bad thing. So why not, right?
The best learned lessons are usually the most painful ones, right?
Right, right, absolutely.
So let's take a bit of a deeper dive back into the demo reel itself and like what the key components are, and maybe start off with like, how do you open your demo reel? I think you mentioned like starting off with opening with a hook before. What are we talking about when we're talking about a hook for a demo reel?
All right, welcome to the world of TikTok. Okay, so unless everyone's been hiding under a rock, it's the Instagram and TikTok all over the place. These social media experts recommend a 3-second hook. Now, I let that a little bit longer for 7 seconds because usually you have an engaged audience. No one's looking at demo reels just for the fun of it. Correct. Anyone can challenge me on that. Okay, but I
Could
don't
be
think
wrong,
people.
but yeah.
I do actually. What am I saying? So unless you're me, usually event planners are not just there scrolling through demo reels. They're there for a reason. So you have a little bit of leeway there. So your hook needs to be 7 seconds long, not more. It could be a little bit less, of course, that's always better. But really, when we start to look at the 10, 15-second demo reels, and I've now researched and watched over 900 demo reels at this point, and this is a daily practice that me and my team have to refine our craft. We can always tell the speakers who are not like hooking people. And that's again a reflection of who you are on stage. Because if you can't be concise in your storytelling, then that's what you're going to show off as well. So 7 seconds, big data point, the punchline of a story, a big something that just like really wows people, like a really intriguing question, not something like, did you know that 2% of men go bald at the age of 20? That's not really engaging. You got to take inspiration from what people on social media are doing today. So I like to create a hook bank. I scroll social media. I call it research. We're not really researching social media. You go and spend a bit of time on social media. And if you see a good hook, you can write that down, try and deliver it in one of your talks, and then put that into your demo reel. So those are kind of the three things. So a big data point, the punchline to a story. At least those two are the really big ones. Or sorry, a really intriguing question. That was the last one. Sorry about that. So if you at least have one of those three in there, it's probably going to be pretty good. And again,
And that
rate
should be
yourself.
like delivered from the stage, like recorded from you, or as a screen with a question in writing. Like how do you
Doesn't matter.
present the hook?
No,
Doesn't matter.
what data that we found, it doesn't actually matter. Whatever can engage somebody to keep watching your reel after that's what's going to really be. So sometimes when we do an interview for some of our clients, what we end up doing is I just tell them to riff off a whole bunch of hooks. I want you to say on camera, now this changes everything. Deliver it hard. Okay. Now I want you to say that 3% of childcare centers have a burnout problem. Okay. Say that, deliver that to me on camera. And I'm just like hitting some of these kind of generic hooks in case we need them as a backup. We've got those, right? So, but you have to create your own for your industry. And I think that's, just something, it's good practice anyways.
Yeah. So when you got your hook, your 7 second hook, what should we then lead that into?
Yeah. Then now we're looking at intrigue. You're building your intrigue. So what I love putting in demo reels is people introducing you. So if you have any earned media, so if you've been on the news or if you've been on a show, like that's great because usually they're saying, we want to welcome John to the stage and John's an expert in this. And so they'll actually introduce you. That looks really great, like really great on demo reel. If you've got multiple of those, even if it's a podcast, right? If you clip a bunch of those together, you're building the intrigue of who is this person. So many people have already introduced him or her that they must be someone of importance. We are creatures of, we want to follow the crowd. So if a lot of people have introduced you, that must mean you're an important person. So that looks really good. This is where you'd want to put maybe some of your credentials, not too many. You don't want to start to puff yourself up too much, but really this is where we start to talk about the problem that people have and the problem that the audience has and highlighting issues that they have. Great thing at the very beginning as well is you asking questions to the audience, like who here has a problem with this? Who here has experienced this in their lives? That looks really good at the very beginning of the talk, because again, that's building the intrigue of who you are and your expertise and what you're going to bring to an event when you get hired to speak.
Love that. And so I've always coached and taught that there are some really important things to have in your demo reel. Ideally, that should be you presenting some information and you telling a story. And if you have audience interaction, then that should be in there as well. Are there any other elements that you think are critical? Would you agree with that, first of all? And are there any other elements that you think need to go in there as well?
So I agree with that to a point. If your talk is all about your story, and I've met speakers, who've hiked Everest on a quarter lung and phenomenal speakers, because that is their story. They've got an entire 45 minutes only speaking about that. And they talk about life lessons they've learned along the way. Then I would say that's a very powerful reason because you are a storyteller primarily coming on stage and sharing your story. If you are more of a data or facts and figures speaker, and there's still places for that, like AI right now and technology, a lot of data guys in there. You don't need to put a story in a demo reel because that's not the central talk. If 2022, I learned about OpenAI and ChatGPT on December 20, like it's not relevant to your talk. So I would say be true to who you are as a speaker and what you bring to the stage. So if you're not a big storyteller speaker, you don't need to force that into your talk. You're going to talk more about the data, the facts, like what's the return? Because again, if that's the audience that you're speaking towards, I talk to usually their innovation speakers and stuff. You want to bring that into your demo reel as well. So that's my take on storytelling. It never harms or hurts to do that. The teaching aspect though, and I want to challenge on that one a little bit because if you're teaching in the demo reel, then you're not creating intrigue. You've closed that loop. The whole goal of the demo reel is to open more loops, like a video sales letter. I'm not sure if you're familiar with those.
Sure.
You want to open loops in the demo reel so people are stuck with intrigue. They're sitting there wondering, man, I do wonder what it's like to be, what burnout is like in the baking industry. I never knew that bakers experienced that. You want people to sit with that and say, man, I've got to get this person on the call. Like I'm hosting the biggest bakers conference in, I don't know where Iowa. Is Iowa a big state of, I don't know. Anyway, like you want to get people to open those loops in their minds, say, wow, okay, I'm really curious to know. I'm intrigued. I want to know more about this because teaching can sometimes take a few minutes to get to the point and get to the punchline. Now you could use that as your hook. You could open with the big punchline and say, 32% of bakers are experiencing burnout in the USA. That would be pretty good there. But yeah, opening loops are the big things you want to think about. Ask more questions, create intrigue, stuff like that.
I like that. Is there anything else that's critical? You mentioned about almost like telling a story with how cohesive does that need to be? What's the story that a demo should ultimately tell?
So if anyone's familiar with the hero's journey, right? So there must be like 3 acts, you call them. This is now getting into the nitty-gritty of how many movies are built. There's 3 acts to it. So you have the beginning where you said the hook, you've defined the problem, you've created some intrigue, and then here you are, boom, you're the person. You're the mentor, you're the guide, you're the person who's going to come in. And so that's why a lot of speaker demo will start with, here I am. This is all about me. And here I am. I'm so great. I worked at this company. People are like, let's get to the point because they've now invested time into watching this reel and they're saying you're a minute and a half in and all you've talked about is your credentials, your stages, and you haven't even defined the problem. And then you get to the middle point and they're like, oh, this is not a speaker that I want on my stage anyways. Click, and they stop watching it. So you bring yourself in after you've defined the problem really well. So you are then brought in as the mentor, the guide, the person who can help out. you've got this unique solution to the big problem that the audience has. And again, this is why it's so important to define the problem that your ideal avatar has, because you want people to disqualify you earlier on, right? If you're not a great fit for that audience at that moment, you want someone to say, wow, not a good fit for this one, but the next one, maybe, or this other kind of audience, or I know someone this would be perfect for, which is again why it's not so great to just talk about yourself in the demo reel. Speak like the heroes are the audience, right? Like I think that's anyone who's familiar with Donald Miller and StoryBrand, he talks about that a lot, right? The hero is the person watching. The hero is the audience there. So you have to keep that in mind throughout that demo reel. So the storytelling part is just the hero's journey. Again, hook, intrigue, problem. You introduce yourself as the mentor, and then the transformation that you bring people through.
That's great. And so squeezing all that into 2 minutes might require, for some people, a little bit of help and guidance on doing this. And this is what you do. Not really, it is what you do. So what's the demand like for this kind of service that you're experiencing at the moment?
That's great because I think more and more people are realizing that the personal brand and the breakout, like I call people breakout speakers when they're in that $5,000 to $10,000 range. They've figured out their niche pretty well. They've been on a few, they've probably done a TED talk, and the dollar figure amount that people ask for, generally tend to follow them. And I coach people as well. I say, you're asking for $1,200 and you've done this for 12 years. Like, how is that possible? That's, what have we done wrong? Let's like tighten this up here. But I want to say the biggest problem that I see many speakers have is when we start talking about the reel, you can only have one problem that you solve in the demo reel. You can't have four problems. People ask me, do I need 4 demo reels? No, you need one demo reel. One demo reel, one problem that you solve. And I like to say that as long as you're brought in to speak to your target audience, you can talk to them about whatever you want. Because someone may say, oh, I don't need you for burnout. I need you for resilience. Great, I'd speak about that too. Then you can sell a different product or sell a different talk. Like that doesn't matter. But the importance is to have one clear, focused reel. So when people are starting to say to themselves, I want to start treating this like a business, I've got my niche, or I can help them refine that a little bit for the video. Those are my favorite speakers to work with. There's a parallel that everyone wants. I think everyone in my industry, like I would love to go and work with $30,000, $40,000 speakers. Wouldn't it be cool if Tony Robbins called and says, I want you to make a demo for me? But that's not my tribe. I'm not really in that world. I was never a $30,000 speaker, but I've been through the journey of getting up to a 5-figure speaker, a $10,000 speaker. And I know what pain points and I know what people want to see at that level. So that's where I do a lot of my focus.
Which makes a lot of sense. And I was just going to think in terms of being able to service your audience as well. It is good to have that one thing. I do see this a lot with speakers finding it very hard to keep themselves. It's not just speakers, it's everyone.
Everyone.
Just keeping yourselves focused in on this one main thing and having that be your thing. Some people think if they do that, no one's going to realize I can do this and I can do this. They can. Just let yourself become known for the one thing is far more powerful than trying to become known for a whole bunch of things, or trying to becoming known as a generalist is next to impossible. But good luck if anyone wants to try doing it. So it is. I do get what you're saying there, and I know it's one of the most difficult things that people come up against in themselves, of just trying to keep it all to the one big thing, the one main thing that they focus on.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to keep that focus because I think that naturally we have a lot of tendencies to move around. And I think a lot of speakers and entrepreneurial minded people, we have that tendency to be like, I am a problem solver on everything. I can set up my systems and I can go do drywall and I love the travel part of it. Like we're so scattered in the ways that we need to run a business. But the deeper I get into the world of running a business, the more I want to pull good behaviors and habits from the business world. In the business world, everyone's talking about that too. It doesn't matter if you're building the next, I don't know, AI ticket management system or something like that. You know what the coaches are saying? One focus, one skew. Stop being the everything. If you want to be known as a sports drink company, don't sell sports drinks and candy bars and backpacks like as your first thing. Like you focus on one thing. Once you start to dominate that market, then you add a different skew. You add a different thing to that. And it is hard because I think that like we were known as so many things. It's hard to say I need to cut this part away. But yeah, once you're known for that one thing, you can bring it right back.
Yeah, you do not need to be the Cheesecake Factory of the speaking industry. That's for sure.
And I'd probably challenge that the Cheesecake Factory probably started with one cheesecake themselves.
Probably.
I'd probably challenge you that. I'm not an expert in Cheesecake Factory history, but probably bet you they probably started with 1 or 2 different cakes and they started like that.
I can't go there, man. It just more than half the lunch or dinner is just deciding what you want, isn't it? So. Too much choice.
It
Too
seems
much
that
choice.
every conference, that's the default, right? I'm not sure how many conferences you've been to. We're like, where are we going to go today? Someone at the back's always, let's go to Cheesecake Factory. You're like, oh, again, that's why I go to the US, because we've got one here in Canada.
I'd rather go somewhere that has a speciality that they do really well myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely get that. As much as we can do these things by ourselves, it is always easier to do it with help and to have someone professionally guiding us along the way. So can you tell us a little bit about what the experience is like of working with you for the clients who you do work with?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, that's a big thing about like entrepreneurial growth. At some point, you have to realize that you're not an expert. And I know when I hired my ads guy for $6,500 per month, that was like, oh my God, this is so much. But all of a sudden, he's returning like he's getting me business to cover his costs. So therefore,
Yeah.
like at some point, you just have to say, I am never going to become the ads expert because I don't have 40 hours a week to dedicate towards running Facebook ads. Same thing as this. So at some point you have to decide, are you a videographer? Okay, maybe you've got a point and shoot camera. Are you a sound person? Do you know lighting very well? Do you know how to tell the story? Are you doing this day in, day out? Are you an editor? And really to learn all those skills, I've had people come to me and say, give me your DIY. And I give this away for free. By the way, to anyone listening, if you want to learn how to do this all yourself, just contact me. I've got a full DIY course on building your own demo reel. It's all in a platform called School. I've got a free community. Just come join and learn how to do that yourself. Totally free. And after a certain point, people go through that program and guaranteed they're going to go through that and say, man, this is a lot more work than I thought. I've already put 20 hours into it. I don't want to watch all my own content. I need somebody to help me out. That was the pain point that I heard from my fellow speakers saying, nobody, like, I 100 different keynotes. I've got friends who've done hundreds of keynotes and they said, I'm never going to go and watch all this stuff. Never. Can you do it for me? Absolutely. And that's how the business was born. It was born from the expertise that you need to do the editing and to make it look like this wasn't a home job is like a level above. It requires somebody who does video editing for a living. So
Yeah.
that's the service. So we start off, I need you to write down with me, and we do this whole exercise around what is the niche that we're talking about? Because again, the demo reel can only serve one niche. So we really try and focus on that. Then people are giving me all their content. We don't filter. We just say, give it all to me. And my team goes through it. They start to find the gold nuggets. They start to, based on the blueprint that we're talking about. Then we lay it out. We lay it out on a virtual cutting, cuts. We start to see all these clips around. We start to blueprint and lay it out in a big script. Then we're looking for things like, okay, what are we missing? We're missing a clearly defined problem. We're missing some video of you talking about your blueprint that's not like over the course of 15 minutes, right? What we need is, I've got the learn framework. L stands for this, E, we need that. That's really, really powerful. If you want to add that into a demo, there's that. Then it's a conversation of, okay, do we need to book an interview? Because having an interview where you speak directly to camera, that looks really good in a demo reel, by the way, because you're connecting with the audience. And again, I'm asking you a bunch of sound bites. So I actually run an interview with speakers and I ask you problems that your audience has. And I go really deep into these problems that you can go and answer them. And you're answering the questions in the minds of the event planners, because I know that industry very well as well. After that, we're on to production. Then we're like editing and splicing and cutting things up. We have a couple of back and forths with that. And I like to remind people that this is a collaborative process. I was just speaking with the client earlier today, and they were saying that, they didn't realize how collaborative it needed to be. And they were so happy for that, because they had this idea that, you throw it all over the fence and what comes off the other side is like a finished demo reel. That's not really how it is, because I can't read your mind. Like, I don't know if you're like a happy, bubbly person or if you want to be more like monotone and like, I can get that from the reel. But I've had people saying, I don't look like pizzazz enough. I don't look like fancy enough. I'm like, you got no content to be fancy enough. So like you haven't been, I can't create content out of nothing. And I've seen demo reels where they use green screens and they're doing a bunch of editing and it looks like they're an audience. They've just used this like cut in stuff. And I'm like, it's so obvious. So I don't try and falsify anything. So super collaborative process. This is all we do. We just make demo reels because this is what we love to do. And it's like really enhancing people who are trying to change the world is super fun. It's really amazing.
I have a bunch of follow-up questions, but I'm going to save them and just ask you one most important thing. For our listener who's thinking, I think I might like to work with this guy, or at least maybe get you a DIY so I can start doing this myself. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Best way, LinkedIn is my main social media platform, although I'm trying to also expand to Instagram. So either of those two, look up The Frequent Speaker and you'll find me. Okay, really easy. The Frequent Speaker, very easy. Go to frequentspeaker.com. is there too. And if you're on the school platform, I am pushing that a lot now because that's where all the free stuff is. If, like I said, I've got a whole course on there and DIYing your own demo reel. Just look up the frequent speaker and you'll find me there too. So I was pretty lucky with getting that name. I think it's a pretty cool name too. So anywhere you look up
I like
frequent
it.
speaker, yeah. I think it represents what do speakers really want? They want to speak with more frequency, right? That's what people want. So anywhere you look up the frequent speaker, you'll find me.
It rolls off the tongue as well, which is
Yeah.
also always a good thing. Can you shared so much really cool information today. And I think anyone who has questions about demo reels is going to come away from listening to this thinking, oh, got some really good questions answered. I have at least a sense of what to do. And you potentially have some next steps for what to do now. So I just want to say thank you for coming and being a guest on Present Influence. I was so excited. It was absolutely worth the wait. And it's been a pleasure talking to you today.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me on. And by the way, I've got a blueprint if anyone wants it on how to actually create, like I said, the hook, intrigue, problem, mentor, and transformation. Really the why, what, who, and what, and how. I've got a free download. Maybe you can put in the show notes or something like that for anyone who
I
wants to download
absolutely
it.
will.
So
I'll want to check that out myself. So
For
I'll definitely
sure.
put the link in there for all the listeners who are interested in that too. Cam Beaudoin, I hope I said your name right this time.
You did though.
Thank you so much for coming on Present Influence.
Anytime. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening. And hopefully by next week, my voice will be a little bit more recovered. Maybe even by Friday, who knows? But on Friday, I'm going to be bringing you a short episode about some of the things that really hold us back as business owners, especially as professional speakers and coaches. I'll even share with you some of my experiences on that, the things that have most held me back, the things that I've often most commonly heard from clients I've worked with that have held them back as well, that come up as issues time and time again. We're going to be taking a look at those on a shorter episode on Friday, just me and you. So do come and join me for that. Now, I will share with you very quickly. I had the pleasure yesterday to interview the amazing Judy Carter. If you don't know who Judy is, she's one of the few people who expertly teaches and trains people in stand-up comedy and helps speakers punch up their stories with humor and be funnier on stage more generally. She's going to share with us some of her tips for helping you to start to be funnier straight away. And we had a really wonderful conversation about the importance of humor in professional speaking. So I know you won't want to miss that. That'll be coming up soon. Make sure you subscribe to the show for it. And remember to leave us a 5-star review. Really appreciate it. Sorry, the episode is a bit late today, but hope you'll understand that life does sometimes get in the way. That said, wherever you're going, whatever you're doing, have an amazing rest of your day. And I hope to see you on Friday.